Predictions of a 2-year recession. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I have my stein of coffee, and I thought we'd have a look at this news.com.au article discussing Scott Morrison, our Prime Minister's concerns for the next 2 to 5 years of our nation. It's not looking very rosy, but yet, the other articles talking about property heating up and auctions shooting over the moon for everywhere but the upper quartile and the first home buyers. So, Scott Morrison predicts a record downturn for the next 2 years. Scott Morrison says Australia is in for a very painful couple of years, and it could take up to 5 years to get back to where we were before the pandemic. 5 years, everyone. So, here's the thing. If we're looking at 2 years, 2 years of recession or slowed growth, high unemployment, what do you think that's going to do to the economy? What do you think that will do to the revenue of a lot of businesses? What do you think that will do to the share price of those businesses? I suggest, if you haven't, look back on what happened during the Great Depression. How long it took the market to adjust. How many times it shot back up and fell back down. It's interesting to see and to learn, and I think there's parallels that can be drawn from that. Particularly the mistakes of state intervention to try and soften the blow. It always tends to be worse than if they hadn't. And I suspect we will definitely have intervention from all sides of politics here in Australia. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says he expects Australia to suffer record deficit from this year and next, and warned it could take up to 5 years for the economy to recover. He said that in April alone, the country lost the equivalent of 30 months of job growth. That's striking. I need a coffee on that. This is why we have to plan to lift that growth, not just for the next couple of months, not for now, but for the next 5 years, he said. We need to lift our economic growth rate by more than 1% point above trend to beat the expected pre-pandemic GDP position by 2025. I can't see that happening. He has said Australia must be careful not to spend too much. There will always be a case made for spending more and for spending for longer, and there are plenty of people who would be happy to make that case, he said, but it's not a wise or responsible course. Instead, he is again pushing for all sectors of the economy to work together to change existing systems, to speed up infrastructure projects and drag the country out of recession. The problem is that's going to involve a culture shift. That's going to involve some perks and entitlements disappearing, and that's going to involve some regulation getting removed. We'll have to see if that's able to even happen. I think, we've had it pretty good for a very long time. There's a generation that's going to learn what tough times are. And they're going to learn in a bloody hard way, to be honest. In an address to CEDA's State of the Nation conference in Canberra on Monday, Mr. Morrison pushed his JobMaker scheme, urging a modernisation of how Australians approach the economy. Mr. Morrison said joint assessment teams would work on accelerating the projects worth more than $72 billion in public and private investment and supporting more than 66,000 direct and indirect jobs. Here's the thing: if we will bring up a website here, Infrastructure Australia. Sorry, I'm almost turning off my streaming software as I'm doing this. Yep, I've opened up another version of it. And we can see here on Infrastructure Australia, if you're not familiar with it, all of the potential projects that are put forward or initiatives that are being explored. And it's something I'd encourage you to be familiar with. I'm having some technical issues on the other screen. Let's just zoom in to Queensland, and you can see a lot of the projects are road and rail infrastructure. There's no discussion of advanced manufacturing. There's no discussion of power, very little power You can go here by type of infrastructure. We'll look at energy. Connection between the eastern gas market and gas suppliers, national electricity market, future connectivity and reliability, near-term optimization of the national electricity market. So all the nuclear fans, they're none there. Let's look at water. There we go, national water strategy and town and city water security. So high priority initiatives. So, this is a good website to become familiar with when there's all this discussion of infrastructure. Because our potable water supply, as an example, has not kept up with population growth. I've looked at that in videos. And there's calls in the Senate and in Parliament to implement a modified version of the Bradford scheme or other ways to increase the capacity for Australia to produce food and to store water. And which are definitely things that need to be considered. So let's have a look at this. So the projects that they're including: the Brisbane-Melbourne Inland Rail, New South Wales Emergency Town Water Supplies, the Olympic Dam extension, so that's good. Marinus Undersea Electricity Link between Tasmania and Victoria. And just think about that we don't even have electricity links between those two ones, or we need a new one. Road, rail and iron ore projects in Western Australia, so we're doubling down on iron ore. Our number one priority is getting people back into jobs, and they need to be real productive jobs that produce goods and services that people want, he said. And I agree with the Prime Minister there. He's right. You need to get people working. You need to get people producing. Work is an important part of people's lives. Particularly for men, it really impacts your sense of identity and worth. Here's one message we should all take away. You need to keep an eye out for your mates. If they are being retrenched, if they're losing work, you need to reach out to them, because it can cause a lot of damage. It can be a real big shock to the ego. And you need to be there, honestly, to check on them, because it can be a tough time. It can be a tough time and it can hurt you to the core. But if you're going through that, you can build up out of it. It may not seem like it, but you can, and it could be the best thing that ever happened to you. It could open a whole world of new opportunities that you may not have considered. But check on your mates, guys. Check on your mates, because this is going to be a tough few years. And there'll be a lot of people that may not have had to encounter this adversity. We do have a cotton wool generation. Or cotton ball, isn't it? Cotton wool. Bloody hell. He further addressed two components of the JobMaker plan. First announced last month, infrastructure and major project investment and deregulation. What is the JobMaker plan? Under the JobMaker plan, 5 working groups made up of government, unions and business groups will look at industrial relation reforms designed to help the pandemic relief. They will review awards, enterprise bargaining agreements, casual work, union and employer misconduct, and greenfield agreements that set flat wages and conditions throughout the lifetime of a construction project. Now, here's the thing. As a small business owner, all of this awards and regulation is a real pain. We've encountered it. It's frustrating. It's complicated. You've got different people on different awards. It just adds a management burden to people running business. So you've got the option. And honestly, I looked at this. I had people come up and tell, you don't have to deal with that. Pay us a flat fee. That's half the price of what you pay someone here, and we'll set up someone that you will employ over in the Philippines. And I know architectural practices that have done that. We've avoided that. We've decided to just scale back our business and be picky and selective with our projects. But that's the thing. It's very appealing to not have to deal with this, that, or the other. And frankly, over there you're paying quite high wages and you get very loyal workers. So let's jump back here. That's the issue. It needs to be easier. It needs to be streamlined. It needs to be less complex, less of a pain. And the problem is a lot of employees probably have never experienced the other side, have never actually employed anyone, particularly all the professional unionists who are sitting there in their job, and you can see, you look on their LinkedIn, okay, they've done 20 years in the union, they've never run a business, so they don't understand. They don't understand the challenges. And the problem is, people will just say, no, walk away. And in our example, we used to give people their first start, their first ever professional job. You know, we had a lot of a lot of them come through, and after a while, you can tell who's good and who's bad real quick. And those opportunities will start to decrease, and then we'll lose those skills. And it's happened in other industries. So it's part of the government's drive to end as quickly as possible the first recession in 29 years, blamed mostly on the restrictions forced by the pandemic. Mr. Morrison said the government has already committed nearly $180 billion on infrastructure over the next decade, with more than half allocated across the 4 years of the forward estimate. He announced a further $1.5 billion to immediately start work on small priority projects identified by the states and territories. Where will the money be spent? These shovel-ready projects include the Inland Rail from Melbourne to Brisbane, the Marinus Undersea Electricity Link between Tasmania and Victoria, the Olympic Dam extension in South Australia, emergency town water projects in New South Wales, the road, rail and iron ore projects in Western Australia. Further announcements on these specific projects will be made shortly. So I'll let you get through this. I'll link to this if you want to, because we've gone through this in similar other articles. But the biggest takeaway here is that he's predicting, 2 years of a record downturn and 5 years before we return to where we were. Do you think they can spend and print their way out of this? I think there's going to be some cultural changes. I think there's going to need to be some fundamental changes to industrial relations, to business, and to reducing regulation and burden so Australians can build their way out of this and not just do the same old trick of property and quarrying. Because otherwise, we're going to remain a country that is frankly low on economic complexity around the world, sitting 73rd in the world. And that's to do with what we manufacture, what we offshore. What do you think? What do you think? I mean, we're going in iron ore. Iron ore, as the example, it isn't the most advanced material on the planet. If we look here at the complexity, it's 985th out of 1,018 in the world. So, okay. I mean, it's a big industry. We are the biggest supplier in the world. Look at that, 50.5%. Then Brazil, we are kicking Brazil to the curb. We're very heavily dependent on China. So we'll have to see, everyone. We will have to see. As always, please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. What projects would you want to see invested in? Some people were mentioning hydrogen production. Some people were looking at more advanced manufacturing here in Australia. Some of the challenges are that we need to have the education system that's capable to produce the people that can do that, that can support it. We need to have a whole chain. Maybe Australia does need to look at the approaches. That I'll bring up another website that I have here, if I can find it. Yes, the Harvard Atlas. They're suggesting Australia takes strategies similar to colonial nations to focus on specific targets that we can achieve, specific industries, to double down on them. We'll have to see. As always, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can. Simply commenting, liking, sharing the videos is a great way to help the channel grow. I see we just hit 14,000 subscribers. Thank you to everyone who's joined the channel. You can support us financially by joining us on YouTube or Patreon, or using our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay or Independent Reserve and Kucoin. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays. You can use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next episode.